Okay, to continue on our discussion about erosion, there are deserts expanding in China, which you can see here. They've circled the major deserts, and around those areas there is some concern about degraded land. This shows changes in land cover and land use in China. And we can see that there used to be a lot more forest, and over time the amount of grasslands, deserts, and degraded lands has increased. And you can see that there's also cropland in here as well, whereas there's almost no primary forest, meaning forest that was there originally, like old growth forest, but there is some growing amount of secondary forest. China is working on ways to reverse desertification, and they've been working on some restoration practices to help the people. Areas that have desertification, if they were poor before, they're now going to be extremely poor because they can't really grow anything in these areas. And it's important to note that deserts created by desertification are not the same as like native deserts. Native deserts have biodiversity and wildlife and different kinds of plants, whereas areas that are created through desertification tend to be very barren and have very low biodiversity. So let's think about erosion in the United States. This shows where wind and water erosion are occurring in the U.S. And so you can see that there's different patches that have more wind erosion and different patches that have more water erosion. So wind erosion is more prevalent in some areas in Texas, eastern Colorado, Nebraska. There's some scattered areas with some wind erosion, and then up here, North Dakota and western Minnesota are also at risk. There are a lot more places that have excess water erosion. So you can see the Corn Belt pretty clearly right here. Areas along the Mississippi where you would expect to see flooding definitely have it as well. And then there are little pocketed areas in other parts of the Southeast, Midwest, and Northeast. So what do we do about this? Obviously, we don't want to lose our soil. We said it takes a really long time to build back up. So there are some different ways that people are trying to conserve their soil. So one is contour plowing, and that's plowing across the slope to slow the flow of water, which you can see here. There is strip farming, where you can plant different crops in alternating strips along land contours. So you can do these two together, which you can see here. Terracing is when you take steeper slopes and shape the land into kind of sequential shelves of earth to hold the water and soil in place. This is one of the strategies they're using in China to reverse desertification. So they're putting in terraces so that they can hold water and soil better, and that way they can restore agricultural lands so that people can grow food again on them. There's also no-till and low-till planting. So low-till planting would be to leave the crop residues on the surface, and that helps cover the soil. It's not completely exposed to the wind and the water. There's some organic matter that then can build up into the soil to help develop soil through time. No-till means that you don't dig into the soil at all. You don't plow it. You're not tilling it. And they found that when you till the soil, it breaks up some of the fungal mycelium, which is like, you know, the mushroom is the fruiting body, the like reproductive organ of fungus, in many fungus, not every fungus. But the mycelium are these like webs of strands of fungus that are all in the soil. And if you dig them up, it disturbs the life in the soil, and it means that those fungus are broken up. Whereas the fungus strands could also help hold the soil in place and help prevent erosion. So there's been a lot of discussion about these types of planting methods more recently. If we're concerned about stream bank erosion, there are several different things we can do. If it's already eroding really badly, sometimes they will just try to stabilize the stream bank. So this is covered in riprap, which are these like big rocks that they've put all along the side of the channel to keep the soil from washing away. This is a weir where they've kind of stabilize a certain area to kind of constrict the flow and make different ways for the water to flow, which reduces erosion at high flow. And this is gabion, which is basically kind of like riprap, but in it's restrained in metal cages. Probably long-term, a better strategy is making sure that there's appropriate vegetation on the banks of streams. So these kind of solutions are like, there's an emergency. We're losing soil really rapidly. We need to do something about it right now. But over longer periods of time, this is more effective. And it serves more than one function. Putting rocks in is just going to stabilize the soil. It's not going to have other functions that are beneficial to our water quality and things like that. So we can plant perennial species, which are species that live from one year to the next. They don't die off every year. They keep growing. So like trees are a prime example of perennial species. There might be bushes and grasses and other things that are perennial that might also be helpful depending on the type of area you live in. So if we plant these species, or if it's an area that already has them, not to remove them, and you have this buffer strip along the stream. This also helps to filter nutrients out of any runoff coming off the agricultural field. So if we're using fertilizers on this with nitrogen and phosphorus, that can negatively impact our water quality, which we're going to talk about later. And this plant buffer will help take out those nutrients before the runoff gets to the stream. And so that helps keep our water quality better. It also keeps the sediment out. So this is going to trap sediment that's being carried in the water so that soil isn't being carried as far, so that'll prevent the rill erosion and the gully erosion. And it'll also keep all that sediment out of our stream water, which is also bad for water quality. So I also wanted to point out, in Minnesota, they have a buffer law. They require perennial vegetation buffers of 50 feet along public lakes, rivers, and streams, and 16.5 feet along ditches. So that means that you can't farm right up to the water, and that helps prevent erosion, and it helps farmers keep their topsoil. But it also protects our water quality for any communities that are going to be taking up water downstream from the farm in order to use for drinking water or other uses. Okay, so other agricultural resources, we talked a lot about soil. Another big one is water. So all plants need water to grow. Agriculture accounts for the single largest share of global water use, but not all of that irrigation water makes it to the plant. A lot of it is lost due to seeping into the ground or by evaporating back into the air. Some countries' low cost of water encourages overuse, which can lead to waterlogging, so the soil can have too much water in it, which sometimes is not good for certain plants, like things like rice can handle lots of water, but other crops are not going to like that. Other places, if we pull water out of the groundwater and then irrigate the soil too much, it can cause mineral salts to accumulate in the soils, which can be lethal to plants. So it can permanently make the land not useful for farming. And this has been a problem in some parts of Australia and some places in the Middle East. So climate change effects are happening as well. Crop suitability is changing. So this shows the average projected % change in suitability for 50 crops to 2050. And so basically, anything that is red means that it's going to be a lot less suitable for the crops being grown in those areas. And anything on the green end is going to become more suitable for growing the crops that they looked at. And so the thing you probably notice first is a lot of the things in the north are the things that are green. So places that were too cold to grow crops with climate change, more of those areas are going to be available to farming. Some other areas, though, are going to be less suitable. So we can see some places like Spain and some parts of northern Africa and some places in the Middle East are going to be less suitable for growing crops. But even in the United States, there's some broad areas that are going to be less suitable, including some places where we grow a lot of crops in here. And so that'll be important to deal with as we're trying to continue to maintain agricultural production during climate change and with a growing population.